What do people like Taylor Swift, Beyonce, and Drake have?
Thousands of people are trekking up the hills to catch a free glimpse of Taylor Swift.
An update on the chaos after a Beyonce concert we told you about earlier in the week.
And why do people like Mel Robbins,
I'm going on tour in 2026.
Matthew Hussey, and the Skinny Confidential
You know who I actually think is pretty culty? The Skinny Confidential, him and her podcast.
have the type of audience on the edge of their seats for anything they're offering? The answer lies in the fact that these people have built a cult-like brand. But what makes a brand cult-like? And what is the cognitive bias that these people are intentionally or unintentionally using for their massive power player brand strategy? That is the question that I'm planning to explore. By the ways, this video is a part of my own Your Game mini-series, where we explore how you can discover the one and only brand and content strategy that only you can play, that you can own. Find your uncopyable game by subscribing so you don't miss out on an episode. Anyways, what is this cognitive bias that I speak about that can help you build your cult-like fandom? And why is building the cult-like fandom so important in today's organic content strategy, even if you're someone who classifies themselves more as an entrepreneur and not really an influencer? And the reason why it's so important is because of this mystical thing that I know we all stress about and pray to, and that is the algorithm. Okay, so I'm actually on my computer right now to illustrate this phenomenon of how the algorithm actually directly or indirectly prioritizes people who can build a cult-like fandom. So we all know that the algorithm, one of the factors that it prioritizes in determining whether to push your video out to more and more people is that it prioritizes CTR, which stands for click-through rate. Essentially, it is when the algorithm gives you an impression, essentially showing your content in someone's feed, they're measuring how many people click on it, aka the click-through rate. Now, from my observations, there's two ways to improve click-through rate. You can make packaging clickable to a cold audience, meaning cold meaning people who do not know you, so they're not clicking on you because of you. They're really clicking because your packaging, aka your title, thumbnail, and video concept is so good that it makes them want to click. Or you can improve your CTR by ensuring that your already existing viewers, they are loyal to you enough that whenever a video of yours pops up on their feed, they will click on it, no matter if it does have good packaging or not. So this brings me to kind of what I know about the algorithm. So essentially, whenever you launch a new piece of content, it's first going to test that piece of content with your existing audience, meaning people who are subscribed to you or people who have watched a video of yours before. Now, let's say you did not make a strong enough impression and you did not create this feeling where people want to jump on your bandwagon. Then when the algorithm shows your video to this existing audience and it has a low click-through rate, it is now going to feel a bit iffy on whether it should test it with new or fringe audiences. And this is kind of where it stops giving your videos impressions. So that's why I mentioned over here that the two ways to improve is to ensure you have a loyal audience so that when it does show your video to existing audiences and it has a high click-through rate, you're now giving the algorithm more confidence to show your video to newer and fringe audiences. Now, one of the ways to make that really strong impression that I mentioned in my 12 brand archetypes video is through what I call influencer authority. And to pull off influencer authority, we need to take a look at this man, and this man. Because what these men have discovered are some psychological theories that bring to life what drives human behavior. And it all started in 1943 when Abraham Maslow published his paper on the theory of human motivation. Now, I already know that a good chunk of y'all probably have seen this pyramid before, but I'm just gonna give a little run through just in case you haven't. You see, what usually drives humans is going from the bottom to the top, meaning they kind of need to have achieved the bottom layers, such as shelter, food, water, before they would have the mental capacity to go after the top levels, like self-respect and belonging. Now, here's the thing. If you would like to build an audience of people who live in a first world country, well, it would just so happen that many people who live in a first world country would have fulfilled bottom layers 1 and 2. So once the basic needs are met, this is where people start focusing in on what we call the first world problems. Now, just because something is a first world problem doesn't mean it's not a real problem. I think many of us do experience first world problems, and it's very real in our heads. Because in actuality, it is a real problem. What drives most of the first world problems is people's desire for love, belonging, and self-esteem. Now, this brings us to the 1970s when Henry Teifel and John Turner created the social identity theory. Because if we're to just backtrack a bit, people would only feel that they have belonging or esteem based on their own self-concept of themselves. This is where the social identity theory comes in, because we can only interpret our own self-concept through the lens of the social groups we identify with. But what happens when the social group we identify with doesn't make us feel good about ourselves? And that leads us to the cognitive bias that you came for that will help you get the cult-like fans. I bet you thought it was the Maslow's hierarchy of needs or social identity theory, didn't you? No, it's even deeper. It is social creativity. Now, I want to make a little bit of a disclaimer, because when I say the words cult-like, no way am I meaning that we are to intentionally manipulate people, because I believe that when you build a cult genuinely, really, what you're providing is a place for people to feel empowered, inspired, and that they have a place where they can truly be themselves and belong. Just want to make that disclaimer because I do not want anyone to be using what they're going to learn in this video to manipulate people. But in order to understand social creativity, we need to understand that simply being in a category doesn't give you esteem. Being good or bad is highly dependent on someone's perception of what good or bad is. So what is perceived as good or bad is really dependent on who you are talking to. And this is why the whole phrase of like, you are the sum of the 5 people you hang out with, is a cliche phrase, but it's also a true phrase. Because that leads me to, there's 2 paths that one can take when they're being exposed to a particular social group with a particular set of values. Now, the first path someone can take is to be willing to mold. Because the thing is, subconsciously, whenever we are in a group setting, we are naturally going to start molding ourselves or competing on, and thus turning into whatever it is that group holds in esteem. Because naturally, as human beings, we don't really want to be on the bottom of any social totem pole. So whatever is in esteem in a social group, we are naturally going to start prioritizing it, valuing it, striving for it. So for instance, let's say you are in a group of people who kind of value like being an everyday person, being humble, that it's best to prioritize family and community over career. So naturally, if you are on path mold, you are naturally going to start thinking of people who do prioritize career as icky. Whether you're conscious of it or not, you're gonna start spending more time on showing up as the person who's very family and community driven because you feel that is what's gonna get you brownie points. And this phenomenon of molding, because we don't wanna be at the bottom of the social totem pole, is why we sometimes see that when some people or a friend joins another social group, they get a new friend group, we start to see, they're starting to change. And it's because subconsciously their values are shifting. Now, the next path one can take is that if you do not want to mold, well, you're going to be refusing to mold. Because let's say you're someone who you're pretty sure on who you are. You're like, I don't mold myself for anybody. Well, some of you would be like, okay, yeah, fine. I guess this person just like doesn't submit to the social group's rules and they just live their lives unaffected. But that's rarely the case. There's always an indirect consequence. And this is where that cognitive bias starts kicking in. Because whether you're on path 1 or 2, your perception of reality is going to start changing. And therefore, your actions, your beliefs, your feelings, what you are going to seek out is going to start changing too. Because let's say you're on path 2, and again, you're in that social group where everyone values being humble and not really independence. Then you, as someone who does value independence, self-expression, you are going to start to feel a lot of tension and a lot of emotions. Because it's not simply you decide to not mold and you're fine. It's that when you choose to not mold, your self-esteem is going to start to get a hit. Because whether or not you're someone who you say you are super self-confident, you're super self-assured, naturally as a human being, if you are in a group and you're literally being surrounded by that group's energy, and you are starting to feel at the bottom of this imaginary social totem pole, you're gonna feel something. You're gonna feel some emotions. It could be angry emotions, sad emotions. You're gonna feel emotions. At the worst end of what this social group can do to you is that they'll be actively judging you, actively criticizing you. But even on the more neutral end, when they're not actually attacking you, it could be that they're just not understanding you, feeling confused around you. And therefore, you start to feel unseen and unheard. And also, naturally, what happens is that other people in the social group, they start naturally getting closer to each other because they have a level of understanding and respect towards each other. So this naturally is going to start to make you feel on the outs. And because you don't feel seen, understood, respected, no matter how confident you are in yourself, it's gonna start getting into your head. But here's the thing, whether or not people are treating you on the worst end or the neutral end, you are going to start to feel isolated. And as we've seen, if you start to feel isolated and you don't feel like people are seeing you with a level of respect, this starts directly impacting your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which if you're not going up that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is a breeding ground for people feeling all sorts of angry, unfulfilling thoughts. Okay, but how does this relate to the cognitive bias and that social creativity that we talked about? Social creativity is the creativity in the social defining of things. And people often do this when they want to redefine the rules of how they should perceive things in order to feel empowered. See, if you want to build a cult-like fan base, it is this moment in time, this point in a person's life where they're feeling all of this isolation, where they're feeling all of this misunderstanding. This is the moment they are the most open to latching on to someone, something, a person, a movement that's going to help fill this void for them. So what you really need to ask yourself is that if we establish that the people most susceptible to jumping on a bandwagon is the people at this low point of feeling all sorts of emotions, such as like not feeling like they belong, not feeling respected, then can you be the person to help them accept their situation by helping them redefine a game or redefine a societal perception? So really, what people are looking for in this moment is a shakeup. Essentially, they're looking for someone to tell them, hey, you have been playing a game that's ultimately been rigged, but let me help you out. Here is truly the game you should be playing. If we were to take cult-like movements from history, the most successful leaders, they've always led from this place. They have lifted and empowered people to help bring people out from the depths of them feeling like a non-person. Someone on the outs, someone who's not good enough, someone who's doing everything wrong, someone who believes in things not true. People will be drawn to people who they feel like just get them, gets where they want to go, validates them, makes them feel seen, heard, and sane. And notice how all the legendary movements in history, they always leaned into redefining.
We don't have anything to be ashamed of. I want to get the language so right that everybody here will cry out, yes, I'm black, I'm proud of it, I'm black and beautiful.
It's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done it better. The credit belongs to the person who's actually in the arena,
It's ugly, but it gets you there.
So how do we start creating this? See, a lot of people think that building this type of brand is all about polarization. Now, I'm not saying that polarization is not the way to do this. What I am saying is that it's almost like a byproduct. It's not really the core thing that really makes this magic come alive. Because the thing is that anyone can polarize. It's not about polarizing to polarize. Polarization by itself is not what moves people, because it is what's underneath the polarization. Why the polarization must exist in the first place, that incites the passion, that makes people want to rally and get behind someone, something. It's have you gotten to the deep nuance, the deep trigger that's going to make people to feel polarized to begin with. So let's talk about some of the ways that you can creatively redefine. The first method is what I call, you didn't know that we were grading that? So basically it is redefining in a way where you're bringing in a new trait. Whereas before people were holding in esteem trait A, you're coming in and you're saying, trait B is actually where it's at. So it could be something that goes like this. The old group, trait A, was looking like you're really busy, shouting, making it seem like you're very smart looking. Versus, we were not grading on that. We were grading on trait B. The person who, I don't need to look like I'm busy. I don't need to look like I'm someone on the trajectory to be successful, because internally, I already know I am. So while everyone is looking at Bali Bill and having high hopes for Bali Bill, I'm over here working on myself and planting my seeds. Putting my dominoes in place. Waiting. Quietly building. Because I don't care about winning a battle. I'm here to win the war. So that is an example of, you didn't know that we were grading on this? Because what this creates is for the people who identify with trait B, they're gonna feel like, this person gets me. This person understands the game that I'm playing. And this person knows that this is the real game to be played. Now, the second method was, who even said that was a bad thing? Basically, you're gonna be redefining because you're taking a trait that people thought was bad and going, wait, why is it even bad? Who said it was bad? So you're taking the same trait and you're redefining the perspective around it. Instead of seeing it as a flaw, you're turning it into a flex. Let's take the trait of someone who's seen as obsessed to the point of crazy and insane. I think a great example of this is recently in the health and wellness space, there's a man named Brian Johnson making his rounds. And he has quite a lot of very passionate haters. People who think he's absolutely insane and they are always cracking jokes at his expense. He's the guy who uses his son as a blood bag.
The New York Times just ran a negative piece about Brian.
He takes blood transfusions from his son.
That guy's weird.
I hope he gets hit by a bus or something.
He's the guy who injects Botox into his ding-dong. He's crazy. Now, from analyzing his messaging and how he combats this, I've noticed that he takes the who said that was even a bad thing method. He's not introducing another trait like the first method. He's literally just leaning in to the trait that people are making fun of him and just redefining it. So if you were to see some of his Instagram posts, they're actually like really funny. He's completely leaning into the fact that people think he's crazy.
Hey friends, this Saturday I'm going to be tripping balls.
These are my ladies. This is Jill. This is my lady Amy. Little Susie. Brianna.
But he's subtly reframing it that his obsession, his craziness is needed for his mission of figuring out how to not die.
I spent 5,400 minutes in a pressurized tank so you don't have to figure out if hyperbaric oxygen therapy works.
So yes, to a lot of people, it is crazy. But he's saying that if he wants to be the person who cracks the code of human immortality and hopefully share it with others, even the people who are hating him, well, that yes, it's going to require him to be absolutely crazily obsessed.
My role in this tapestry of existence is to try to sherpa the human race in a positive way to this new thing, which sits on the other side of all of our current ideas about what reality is.
He knows that he's going to have to do what others will not do to get the data he needs for his mission. And he's decided to own the fact that he is a human guinea pig. And honestly, I can see why with this reframing, why despite him having a lot of haters, he also has an incredibly strong, passionate following of people who will fight and defend on his behalf. I mean, just go into his comment section and get the popcorn out. People just arguing on behalf of Brian Johnson. The people who are so inspired by him, I'm having a feeling that the reason why they will back him up is because they too agree that obsession is needed if you want to achieve something great. And they too are maybe obsessed with health to the point that maybe their social groups think they're crazy. Or maybe it could simply be that they too are obsessed about their own craft, their own mission. And they love it when they see another person like Brian Johnson who's willing to throw it all down for what he cares about. Now, the last method is the ew, why are we even competing with them method. Basically, you're going to be redefining the perspective on like, wait, I am not competing with them on this trait because they're playing their game and I'm playing my own game. Because the thing is, if I compare myself with them, yeah, I'm bad. But like, if I compare myself with this other person, I'm not really that bad. So in actuality, I shouldn't be comparing myself with anybody at all. So how this looks like is that you could be comparing yourself to someone who is going after a more entertainment-like YouTube strategy. And so they're getting the massive amounts of views because they're having a very large total addressable market, and just the nature of their content just means that they can rack up those numbers. So if you're someone who you're chugging along and you're comparing yourself with that person, you're going, wait, I feel really bad about myself. But if instead you adopt the mindset of, no, these type of content creators, they're not bad or they're not better. They're just playing a different game. They're playing the entertainment game. I'm over here playing the expert game, the education game. It's an entirely different game. And so I cannot grade myself based on those rules because those rules don't apply to me. That's an example of, ew, why are we even competing with them? Now, those are just some of the ways that one can redefine, but I want to talk about how can this break down. There's two ways that this redefinition can break down. Sometimes the method of how you choose to redefine, it sometimes inspires passivity, meaning that yes, you're making someone feel like they belong, but you've done it in a way where it's too pacified and not enough mobilized. And this is an important distinction if you're someone who you're trying to incite some sort of action. It could be you have offers that you're trying to sell, products that you're trying to sell. Maybe you need someone to actually like do something. If how you redefine inspires passivity and not mobility, then you will have a problem if you're trying to, for instance, monetize. We will definitely be exploring this nuance in future videos and also in my newsletter. But the second way this can break down is because you yourself didn't step into your main character energy. So you can never be the person to truly champion this message, this energy that you want. And that's why watch this video up next where you'll learn how to step into your main character era.